In anxiety, the symptoms do not go away. The symptoms of anxiety will usually follow you wherever you go. I am just about to use the story of a man called Mark to make us understand the difference between stress and anxiety. This is a story of Mr. Mark. Mark was always tired, always tense, and always restless and unable to focus or concentrate in things that he did. He had persistent worry about everything. He had racing thoughts that refused to switch off. Now, these symptoms had lasted for more than 6 months. But he always told himself, I am going through stress. But one day, his heart started racing. His heart started beating fast. He couldn't focus or concentrate in anything that he did. He couldn't sleep. And suddenly, he felt like he was losing control. It turned out what he thought was just stress was something much deeper. Now, it is important to note that Mark is a hardworking young professional. He worked long hours, always trying to beat up deadlines. In fact, he was constantly under pressure. At first, he brushed off the headaches, the muscle tension, and irritability, and he always said, I just need some rest. But then, boom, came the panic attack. His chest tightened and he couldn't breathe. His heart pounded as if it was jumping out of his chest. He was so fearful that he felt he was in a dream. So he had an out-of-body experience. He always felt sweaty. His hands were shaking. And he felt like something terrible was just about to happen to him. Now, finally, a friend convinced him to see a doctor. And so he finally saw a psychiatrist. And at the end of the day, a diagnosis was made. And this diagnosis was generalized anxiety disorder with panic attack. Yes, it was anxiety with panic. It was not just stress. What's the difference between stress and anxiety disorder, anxiety problem? Now, this is what we need to understand. Stress is defined as your body's response to external challenge, like work deadlines, examination, and so on. Now, stress means that there is an external challenge you are trying to meet up with. Like it has been given as an example here. You might have an exam. It may be a work schedule. It may be anything that you want to meet up with. It may be anything that you want to achieve. So trying to do that, you notice that your body is responding in a certain way. Your muscles can start feeling tense. Your heart may start beating a little faster. You may start having a kind of breathing irregularities because you are trying to meet up with something. So you are somehow on edge. You're a little bit fearful. You're a little bit restless. So this is just stress because you are trying to meet up with a challenge. You are trying to meet up with a stress that you can see. It can be work-related or other things. Now, let's compare it with anxiety. When there is no work, there is no examination, and there is nothing, and your heart continues to beat, or your heart keeps beating as if you have a challenge, as if you have something on ground to do. So that is where anxiety comes in. So anxiety can look like stress sometimes, but it lingers even when there is no trigger. So you can see that as per stress, there is a trigger. You have an exam to meet up with, you have a deadline to meet up with in your office or something. So there is a trigger. But in anxiety, there is no exam, there is nothing, especially in generalized anxiety disorder. Please note, generalized anxiety disorder. You cannot place anything as the cause of the reason why your heart is beating fast, or the cause of the reason why your breathing has become irregular, or the cause of the reason why your muscles have become tense, and other anxiety symptoms that you develop. So stress goes away when the situation is over. As long as you are finished taking that exams, beating up with the deadlines and all that, so your stress goes away, you no longer feel tense, you no longer feel anxious. So that one is actually stress. But then in anxiety, the symptoms do not go away. The symptoms of anxiety will usually follow you wherever you go. It doesn't matter whether you have a deadline or not. In fact, in most times in anxiety, you don't even have any deadline to meet. You don't have anything at stake to do. But you see yourself fidgeting. You see yourself being fearful. You see yourself having heart palpitations. Your heart can't really rest. It keeps beating as if you are doing an exercise. So all these symptoms of anxiety will usually persist even when you don't have anything at stake. And that is what you see in anxiety problems. After consultation with the doctor, with a mental health professional, of course, Mark started therapy and he learned some coping skills. So there are certain things that Mark learned from the professional that helped him to cope with the anxiety that he had developed as a result of the long-term stress that he had been through. And what are these coping mechanisms that helped Mr. Mark? This is where we have to listen very carefully because we can actually apply it in our day-to-day activities, whether you're under stress, whether you have anxiety problem. These coping mechanisms will usually help you to pull through. Number one is breathing technique. Breathing technique is a way of breathing that helps somebody to relax, that helps somebody to calm. So there is a way to do breathing techniques whereby you breathe in deeply, spend some few seconds, let's say 3 seconds, 4 seconds in breathing, and then you breathe out over a period of about 3 seconds or 4 seconds again. So you breathe in. After you have breathed in deeply, you just hold your breath for like 2 seconds, 3 seconds, and then you breathe out over a period of time. Okay, you make your breathing out to be longer than breathing in. So it has a calming effect. It has a way of making someone who has anxiety problems to relax, or even somebody who has stress to relax. So breathing exercise is key, is very important. Now there is also what the health professional would taught Mr. Mike. He was taught cognitive strategies. Cognitive strategies are ways of thinking that makes an individual to be able to control his thoughts, to be able to control the way he thinks, because sometimes we are also anxious because of the way we reason, because of the negative thoughts we have in our head that usually refuse to switch off. Even when we try to forget these thoughts, we are unable to do that. So cognitive strategies are also very important in coping with stress. Another is regular exercise and better sleep habits. You can agree with me that exercise is very important for most medical conditions. So anxiety is not excluded. So regular exercise is very important. It helps you to cope with stress. It helps you to cope with anxiety. Lifestyle changes also can be implemented, or was also implemented by Mr. Mark. Mark reduced caffeine, he reduced alcohol. So reducing alcohol, reducing caffeine, or better still, quitting alcohol, quitting caffeine can actually help someone to improve if the person has severe anxiety issues. And then most importantly, what Mr. Mark did was that he stopped ignoring the signs. You know, sometimes when anxiety begins to come, we are usually not able, or we tend to neglect the early signs of anxiety. Not until we start having panic that we begin to actually panic and we say, wow, there is a problem with me. So we don't want to wait until we get to the level of panic attacks before we're able to realize that we have anxiety symptoms. Now, what is actually the takeaway in this very short story of Mr. Mark I just told? If you are telling yourself it is just stress all the time, but your symptom continues, your symptom persists, yet you keep saying it is just stress, then you might have to have a rethink. Remember what I said about stress? Stress is when you have something at stake and your body begins to respond in a certain way. For example, your breathing changes, your heart beats a little faster, you become restless, you're not able to sleep very well, and so on and so forth, because of the challenge you have ahead of you. This one can be termed stress. But What if you don't have any of these challenges ahead of you? You don't have any exams, you don't have any of those things that I mentioned, yet your heart is pounding very fast, you are feeling fearful, you are feeling anxious, your muscles are tense, you cannot sleep, you cannot relax. Then you might be having an anxiety problem. You might have to meet a professional for assessment and possible diagnosis, and then, of course, possible treatment of the problems that you have. So I just hope that this little piece of information helps us to understand what stress is, helps us to understand what anxiety is, and then some of the coping strategies I have mentioned. I just hope that some of us who have experienced anxiety or who are still experiencing anxiety can actually pick up from some of these coping mechanisms that I've mentioned in order to be able to apply it in ourselves so that it can help us to cope with anxiety and stress. But then, most importantly, if you think you have anxiety problems, please, it will be perfect to meet a mental health professional for advice and for possible treatment. So thank you very much for listening to me. I hope you really enjoyed the video. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Thank you very much for your time.